Welcome to Construct Tech TV. I am Peggy Smedley. For those of you who joined us last week, I walked you through the history of Orlando, the city beautiful, and I brought you to the present day. And as you have seen, the city is becoming very connected. And I had the pleasure of speaking with Chris Castro, Director of Sustainability, about the vision for the city. I also spoke with Charles Ramdat, the Director of Smart Cities, about how it has evolved and the hurdles along the way. Finally, I chatted with Rosa Akhtavari, the Chief Information Officer, about how technology keeps the city running. If you haven't had a chance to see these segments, I really encourage you to check them out. They shared some really great insights. Now on today's show, we will wrap up the story of Orlando. We will discuss how the city has become even more connected with a workforce that leverages data collected from its citizens, devices, and network systems. And this means managing and monitoring lighting and energy, public works and transportation systems, and public services and innovation. So what is truly at the core of this smart city is energy, water, transportation, and the built environment. And that's truly what you call a city connected Orlando. The CDC published a report that found that just shy of 43% of construction workers sleep less than 7 hours per night. Now, we all know that a lack of irregular sleep often leads to fatigue. And what does that mean? It leads to greater injuries on your job sites. But I'm more concerned at what that happens to when workers get behind a piece of equipment. We're going to delve into that topic today. Carl Heinlein is the Senior Safety Consultant at the American Contractors Insurance Group and the Director at Large for the American Society of Safety Engineers. Carl, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
So Carl, you and I talked the last time you were here about injuries and things like that. And one of the things you mentioned was fatigue. Now this is serious because if our workers are fatigued, we all know that there's greater injuries and we can't have that. Why is that happening on our construction job sites?
I think that there's a number of reasons, but the main one is there's really not any rules or regulations to deal with that. We're also in an industry that we really push for. Our workers like to work overtime. They like to make money. So we're kind of competing opportunities for this.
Do we also have, I think a lot of things right now is we have a lot of jobs going on. It seems like we're trying to rush to get these jobs because we have more jobs than we do workers these days. Is that part of the reason that's leading to all of this fatigue?
You hit it right on the head. We are short on skilled workers. So the skilled workers are working more. They're working bigger projects. So there's the lack of employees that are in our space right now creates this lack of really opportunity, so it also increases the fatigue. People are tired. So
don't employers have some responsibility to try to help their employees? What can they do? Because I think we really need to address this because I think ultimately, think about it from an insurance perspective, which I know you do, there's going to be a lot of injuries here, and I think we're going to have a lot more costs. So I think employers really should step up and do things to help their employees not get injured and reduce that fatigue.
Right now, again, this is an area that construction companies are starting to focus on. May it be either through their wellness programs, but really it's still, they don't know where to go for resources. There is a place that is starting to put together some information, and that is the Harvard School, and it's led by a gentleman named Dr. Kreitzer that's doing a lot of sleep studies and a lot of analytics, and really where he's taken his time and effort is through the police departments, EMS, and fire departments, where these folks are working extremely long hours, tough situations. So fatigue is something we're going to see more and more information, spaces to go for assistance moving forward.
So if we're raising awareness and companies raise awareness and like you're saying, these studies and things like that are doing, is that what we have to do is raise the awareness to employees that, look, you need to understand when you're tired. You need to understand what you need to do, not to be operating equipment on the job site. It's that awareness that we raise that is actually going to reduce the injuries on the job site?
I think that there's a number of different tactics go on, but you said it right that right now we have to take a look at where our exposures are. People are tired, so companies have the opportunity now to really adjust schedules, but really it comes down to education. Energy drinks aren't doing it, coffee isn't doing it, and really what we're finding out with fatigue is not only is it affecting our workers on the job, but off the job, health-wise.
So those five-hour drinks aren't going to do it, right? They don't want to chug those. That's not going to do it.
Short-time success, long-term failure.
So is there a recommended number of hours we should be telling our workers that they should be getting? Because you hear that all the time. You should get your 8 hours of sleep. And we know these workers are out there a lot. Is there something we should be telling them?
Absolutely. First of all, good quality sleep is the important thing. So 8 hours is certainly recommended, but do you have the TV off? Are you not eating right before you go to bed? So it's really sometimes it's quality versus quantity. So if you can get 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep, that's fantastic. But if you get anything less, let's make sure we don't have the TV on, music, distractors, so you are getting sleep where your body's recovering, your mind's recovering, and you're ready for a good day of work the next day.
Are insurance companies actually paying out when they find out that there's been an injury because of, or an accident because, there's been a problem? It's related because, somebody was tired. I mean, whose fault is it? Is it the employee? Is it the company? I mean, it really is a challenge, I think, for an insurance company.
Great question. First of all, I think that we do a less than stellar job of tracking the material. Do you ask someone after an accident, are you tired? I think that you would ask most folks, people are tired almost all the time.
All the time, right? Yeah.
So I think that the analytics to track down what we're doing certainly needs to be improved. There's so many things that we've seen in the construction industry that's come from this. Are people, when they're tired, are they making, constructability mistakes? So we have to go do rework. Are they making issues where they're kind of more irritated and they're having personnel issues? Are they going home and they're tired driving on the way home? Are they having issues when they are at home because they're tired? This is such a large area that we need to focus on, and we've only started taking really baby steps to address it at this point.
When we look at this big scheme of fatigue, I mean, do people understand that their behavior is what leads to a lot of accidents? Do they take personal responsibility for how they're acting at the job site? Or is it sometimes they say, look, my company wants me out there. There's not someone else to do the job. What am I supposed to do? So it's kind of that yin and that yang. It's kind of hard to say. How do you do it, right?
Yin and yang, you couldn't have put it better, because really we want people to work hard to get the job done, and yet we want them to be on their skill level at the highest level. We want them to be on the mark, and yet we want them to work hard. They're tired, and yet we don't want them to get injured. So it is competing, it is the yin and yang, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to do a better job addressing that moving forward.
I'll tell you, Carl, I love when you come here and you're on the show with us, so thank you so much for spending more time with us. The number one thing is we want our workers safe, right?
Correct.
And we want them to get as much rest,
Absolutely.
Hey, put those coffee down at night, get some rest, and don't watch TV before they go to bed. There's at least some tips, right? That's what we got.
Great.
Carl Heinlein, he's the Senior Safety Consultant at the American Contractors Insurance Group and the Director at Large for the American Society of Safety Engineers. That's your Safety Zone for today. Today's cities are often looking for new opportunities to enhance resident experiences. And this is changing the way cities like Orlando are built. Joining me today is Matt Brofman, Director of Innovation at the City of Orlando. He manages enterprise digital platforms and provides support to city staff to achieve goals within the digital ecosystem. Matt, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So Matt, let's talk about the digital services you guys are doing here in Orlando right now.
Sure, yeah. Mayor Dyer's asked us really to focus on how we can digitize all of our services. And oddly enough, the first step in that is actually figuring out what services the city offers. So a city like our size, we've already identified about 250 different things people can interact with. So these are distinct services that we offer. And it's a little bit of a challenge to think about how do you not only digitize 225 different things or 250 different things, but actually get people to them. So if you think about it, a restaurant or a retail store, they're going to have, really a handful of things that someone can do, right? They can buy an item, they can return an item, whatever it might be. At government, we've got, in our case, 250 things. And so we kind of think about it, how do you get people to those? So we're starting to think about what is the way that you organize them that makes sense to people, not by departments, not by who does it here internally, but how do we organize them? And then how do we make them really super simple to use online? The instructions very easy to understand and something that people can actually do from their house versus having to come in person.
So is this for all the residents? Is it for businesses as well? How does that actually work?
Yeah, it's for both. And the payoff there is for both, right? So for residents, it's really important that it's digital because not everyone can get off of their 9-to-5 job between our hours of 9 to 5 to come into City Hall. So it's super important that we have a City Hall online that's open 24/7, 365 days a year, so that if you got a parking ticket and you want to pay it, you shouldn't have to come down to the parking garage to pay that. Or if you want to appeal it, you should be able to do that online as well. And so it's really important for residents, but also for businesses, because if you're trying to open a business or if you're a contractor doing business here in Orlando, to take time to come down to City Hall, to hand things over, to wait in line, that's time you could be using to actually grow your business, and that's what we want to be able to do.
When you look at things the way you guys are at the city of Orlando right now compared to other cities, how do you guys think that you look at as yourselves as being forward thinking when you look at technology, trying to work with your the businesses and the residents? How do you view the way you're doing things digitally compared to other cities?
Yeah, there's a great cohort of cities, I think, right now that are looking at how do you really bring these services, not just online in a form, but actually make them easy to use and make it easy for residents to use. And so we're in that cohort. But where we think we've kind of got a unique opportunity is, A, Mayor Dyer is fully on board. This is something he supports, something he's been pushing us to do. And B, we're a big city, but we're not so big that we get stuck in bureaucracy. And we've got a team now that Mayor Dyer's asked us to bring on board that is going to focus just on these digital services, either improving the ones that are already out there or bringing more of them online. And so we think we're kind of in a unique position, being a mid-sized city that's got the resources behind it to make this happen.
Do you think digital services will eventually help in how cities are being built? Do you think that'll also contribute to that in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, on a variety of levels. The first is just on the pure development aspect of it, right? The easier it is to do business with a city, the more likely somebody is going to want to come back and do business. So small developers becoming medium-sized developers, becoming larger developers, that will really shape our city. And then the other thing that we like to think about is, we've got lots of projects with sensors and data and all these things that are happening. We know that's the direction cities are headed in. But if you imagine, for example, that everyone can envision this world where you could go tell Amazon Alexa that your trash got missed, right? And that would notify us immediately. Well, in order for that to happen, we actually have to have the basics of, you should be able to go online today and report that the trash got missed. So in order for the automation to happen and the next generation of these things to happen, we actually have the base infrastructure set up, and that's what we're building, is that base infrastructure that will allow us to have a sensor that maybe detects that that trash bin didn't get picked up, go ahead and dispatch somebody to go get it. But in order to do that, we've got to have everything connected. And so we're starting with that, which is let's connect it through a mobile phone or through the web where a resident can request it. But the future of that and the long term of that are sensors and automation to allow that to happen.
When we look at all these things digitally and the security behind all of these things digitally, do we have to make sure that everything's secure, that we have the proper infrastructure, but they've all got to be harmoniously, as you described, working in sync? Are we getting there? Is it going to be years before we get there? How do you see that all happening?
I think the security is getting there. I think, we've seen some, the biggest problem with digital is your account creation, right? And so there's some really interesting projects that you've seen the UK has struggled with and attempted to do with identity and registration. I think that our federal government is working on a project now for login systems that will allow governments at the federal level to share login information and with your permission, the different information you may have provided that federal agency. And I think we'll see the exact same thing happen with local governments. Here we've tried to actually avoid any account creation. For example, if you want to tell us your trash got missed, we don't need you to create an account. If you want to report a pothole, you shouldn't have to create an account. So that gets rid of some of that security issues, is the idea that you don't actually need an account because these are things that anyone should be able to do. For the things that need an account, we shouldn't be in a world where your county that you fall into, you have one account, the utility company, you have another account, and your city, you have another account, and maybe the Parks Department has a third. We want one place where people can go to actually do their business.
Well, I have to tell you, Matt Brothman, Director of Innovation at the City of Orlando, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Glad to. Thanks so much.
All right, that's our Innovation in Tech for today. Thank you so much. All areas of a city continue to evolve with the advent of technology, including solid waste and water. Today I am joined by Rick Howard, Director of Public Works at the City of Orlando. Rick, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
So Rick,
nice to be here.
Well, we're really glad to have you here today. So let's talk about what technologies are we actually talking about that are used in solid waste to improve the process that you guys are doing right now. I think there's a lot of things happening. What kind of advanced technologies are we actually talking about?
Well, we collect about 160,000 tons of residential and commercial waste every year. So we have to be very efficient in the way we collect that and process it. We have implemented a great number of technologies like computerized route optimizations, and then we also have what we call a green fleet with hybrid trucks and compressed natural gas vehicles that collect all the waste. And we are experimenting with different waste to energy methods we're trying to implement right now. There's just so many different technologies. We don't exactly know which one to pick. And I think if we picked one, there might be something better a few months down the road. So we're looking at that, we're monitoring that, we're looking at all the new technologies there, and we're implementing a food waste program. We also give away free composters to our residents, so we try to reduce the amount of municipal solid waste that we actually collect.
Rick, let's talk a little bit about the fleets, because the energy management and the systems that you're using there with fleets, because fleets are really important when you talk about trying to maximize and use the types of fleets you're doing there. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think when we look at fleets today, we talk about energy conservation. That's really a big thing, I think, for everybody involved in any industry that we're talking about. How important is that today?
Well, it saves us a tremendous amount of money over the long term. Plus, just much more efficient, much greener, much more energy conscious. Compressed natural gas is, I think, the fueling method that we'll use going forward. We're kind of getting away for hybrid trucks right now, which actually it generates energy from braking from stop to stop. So I think that our future, at least in the short term, is going to be all compressed natural gas.
When we look at technology in general, you're looking at your fleets, you look at having to manage a lot of things in the city. I mean, in your city, you have a lot of lakes. I think if I did some research, and you guys have over 100 lakes, correct me if I'm wrong. How do you look at that in managing, using technology to look at things like natural disasters and kind of managing, being proactive in things like that? Because I would think, like just in the fleets we were talking about, trying to manage things that you guys have hurricanes. I mean, we live in Chicago, we deal with a lot of snow, we deal with things differently than you do. But how do you manage things like that in the way you were trying to talk about how you're going to look at how you're going to manage the way fleets go out or things? I would think that all of that has to be tied together with technology and the way you're looking at things as well.
That's correct. In Florida, we get about, on average, about 30 billion gallons of rainfall every year. So we have to manage that rather efficiently too, with recording rain gauges and lake level monitors to, via telemetry, get that back to our computers, and we can instantaneously tell you what the rainfall intensity is during the storm. So if we have a given input, say the weatherman said there's going to be a storm and there's going to be 3.5 or 4 inches of rain per hour, then we know what that intensity means. We know what that intensity does to our lake levels. So we can anticipate, in those lakes that we do have lake level controls on, we can start to implement those.
Is this the same thing what you're describing in a reclamation process that you're using for things like that? Is there technology that's involved in the whole process as well as that?
Well, this is just lake level control and trying to manage our stormwater input and try to manage the lake levels before they become a flooding issue. This really does.
I was going to say, do you use the same type of technology for that? I didn't mean to interrupt, but I mean, do you use this? Is it the same technology that you're using for the reclamation? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, we monitor our lift stations through telemetry, yes. So it is the same sort of communication method. But these are just rain gauging and lake monitoring sites that convey all that information back to a central location.
When you're looking at all of this, what advice, I guess, would you give one city to another about what you've kind of looked at technology? Is there something that you would say that you've learned that you say, this is what we'd give? You know, we understand that it takes, you know, I always say it takes a village, right, to build a city, to use all this technology. Is there one advice you would give another city from all the things that you've learned so far?
I think if I could give any advice, it would be don't be afraid to experiment. I mean, we've done a lot of different things. Some of them have worked, some of them maybe not so well. So we're always trying to be better. So when you're always trying to be better, you're going to fail sometimes. So I would just say, keep trying.
Well, I have to thank you, Rick Howard, Director of Public Works at the City of Orlando. I want to thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, that's our innovation and infrastructure for today. Implementing the energy-efficient technology upgrades across a city like Orlando requires careful oversight. Today's guest leads a team of construction managers and control specialists. He helps identify and implement energy efficiency upgrades throughout the city's wide portfolio of buildings. Please welcome Ian Laheef, Energy Project Manager at the City of Orlando. Ian, I'm so glad you could join us today.
Pleasure to be here.
So Ian, let's talk about the kind of projects you're working on for the City of Orlando right now.
Sure. As Energy Manager for the City of Orlando, I work with a team of construction professionals and building automation technicians, and we oversee all the energy efficiency investments across 6.8 million square feet of space here at the City of Orlando. We start off by going into all of our portfolio of buildings and doing audits or assessments and taking inventory of the different equipment in each space, and then coming up with a roadmap on how to either approach, retrofit, or remodel those spaces to be more energy efficient.
So what kind of economic impact are we talking about on some of these projects you're looking at?
The city utilizes a $17.5 million bond to fund all of these investments across our portfolio, and we aim to have $2.4 million in annual electricity savings by implementing a lot of these technologies like LED lighting, building automation systems, HVAC retrofits, and really just optimizing the systems to make sure that we're only lighting and cooling or heating the areas that we need to during the times that we need to. The $2.5 million in savings is not only used to pay down the debt on the bond, but there's a surplus built in so that we can pay for more energy efficient buildings. In fact, the surplus from this latest bond is going to help pay for the new Orlando Police Headquarters, which is a LEED Silver certified facility.
And we always talk about in construction how important those LEED certified buildings are, and to build something like that is significant. How long is that project, when is that going to start, and how long will that project take?
So that project actually just wrapped up last spring.
Okay.
All of our city facilities meet LEED certification at a minimum. In fact, we have a new charge from the mayor as of this last summer that all city facilities need to be run solely off of renewable power by the year 2030. So we have our work cut out for us. We're going through all of our buildings, trying to optimize them the best we can, and then get to a point where we're making them net zero ready or solar ready as we build more buildings across the city.
So talk about a project like that. What does it require? I mean, what kind of things do you have to do to go into new buildings, retrofits, to really make them certified like that, LEED certified, when you're really looking at solar ready, all of that? There's a lot of work entailed in that.
And there definitely is. And there's two approaches with the existing buildings. All of our buildings are existing and they're occupied. And we don't have another place to put the occupants, whether it's a community center or a fire station. And a lot of times they have to maintain
You gotta make people happy. Your residents, you gotta make everybody happy when you're going in there.
Exactly. So you can't just go in there and get the building and hope that they're going to be okay with it, because they won't. We need to make sure that we're not only making it more energy efficient, but we're improving their operational value of the building too. So we talk to the fire department, we talk to the lieutenants and the chiefs, and we figure out how can we make the building work better for them. So we work with them, and we see a lot of return on investment, not only from the energy side, but from the operational efficiency of the buildings as well. On the new construction side, you really have to have the collaboration up front. You can't be breaking ground, turning shovels, and then start to think, should we go for LEED certification on this building? Or maybe we want to make it net zero. It's got to be a plan right from the beginning.
So Ian, tell us about then the data gathering that's entailed in that.
Whenever we go into a building, whether it's a new construction or an existing facility, we want to make sure that we're making energy efficiency improvements, but then leaving the facility with measurement and verification technology, whether it's smart sensors or building automation, that can bring that data back to our energy management department. All of our facilities that undergo a renovation have building automation that can be remotely controlled from our building management group. Also, all the major equipment is tied into our sub-meters and our dashboard, so that we can really understand how the data is being used, where we're saving the energy, and then make future data-driven decisions for new projects.
Are you using this data then to build on and make those buildings, as you described, more energy efficient every moment? I mean, as you describe that, because that would seem that all those buildings are really doing something amazing.
You're right. We call that in the engineering world retro commissioning. So constantly going into these facilities, tweaking how they work, just like you tune a race car engine. You want to make sure that you're optimizing the process and then going through the feedback loop of all the controls and evaluating, is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? The real next level that we see going past just building automation is being able to determine the total cost of ownership of our facilities. Energy efficiency and electricity is just one component of the expenses of running a building. You also want to take into account the work order systems, the labor that maintains the major equipment, and bring that all together, even as so far as the guy that goes out and works on a chiller and the refrigerant that goes into the chiller and his time and the fuel that goes into his truck or van. Bring all that information together, because then when you understand the big picture of the data, you might be able to show a better ROI on replacing some of that equipment and have even bigger returns.
So Ian, you're describing, we always say that the workers out there don't necessarily contribute as much as they can, but the way technology is changing and the way construction is changing, it's going to totally revolutionize the way a building goes up in the future. That's what you've just described, that vocational schools are going to have a whole new way in contributing in some ways too, and how they teach some of their workers to what they'll be contributing into the way buildings are going up in the future. Do you see that as the way construction is going to play a role in the future, in the way a building goes up?
I think it's absolutely critical. In fact, if somebody is working in building operation and maintenance, or even in the renovation and construction industry, and they're not taking into account the maintenance savings or the added value of having an educated workforce that's working on those facilities, they're really missing the boat, and they're missing out on a lot of savings. In fact, as the city of Orlando, we've worked with our surrounding technical colleges, and they even instituted a 2-year degree in building automation and energy management, so that we can have a pipeline of people coming into this industry that are already up to speed on sensor technology, the Internet of Things, and have a hands-on working knowledge of how these building components work.
So looking at the big scheme of things, do you think all of this information and the city of Orlando is going to be a model city for the future of what construction can be as going forward and years into the future?
Certainly. We are already stepping on the scale and trying to lead by example. We have very transparent data. All of our facilities, we upload to Energy Star, and anybody can take a look at what we're doing with all of our buildings. We try to really drive the needle forward on energy efficiency with our city facilities, and We feel that we have responsibility to do so with taxpayer money, but we also want to be able to kind of push and inform the local industry and say, look, this can be done. It can be done in a cost-effective manner, and we have the local talent to get it done and save money. And who doesn't want to save money?
Is there challenges, though? Do you see the challenges behind getting companies and businesses behind what you're saying and citizens behind believing it?
Sure. And at first, there was a really big reluctance to share data, just like nobody wants to go to the dentist or the doctor because they don't know what they're going to hear. When you're running a building, especially multiple different types of buildings, people are a little concerned about sharing that information or even kind of popping the hood and taking a look at how their building is running. We want to make sure that people understand it's critical to do so. You need to audit your building. ASHRAE has very refined audit techniques to go through, and we've done ASHRAE Level 2 audits on all of our facilities, and that's really kind of opened up a lot of savings opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise looked at.
So ultimately, if you can give the savings back to the residents and to the community, that's where the real benefits and the savings, and everybody wants to share data. We're in a generation of sharing information all the time. So you've just described when you can give it back, everybody wins, correct?
We also want to be able to open up our data so that if there's other startups out there or tech firms or somebody's coming out of college and has an idea that maybe they can take this database and come up with some better data-driven decisions, or maybe it's an app or maybe it's a new software program that enhances the industry, we want to be able to push that and make that flourish.
Thank you, Ian Laheef, Energy Project Manager at the City of Orlando. That's Learn It. Today's word of the day, or should I say words of the day, are fleet management. You may often think of transportation or logistics when you hear that phrase, but fleet management extends from roads to waterways and even the construction job site. Now step back with me here just for a minute. Before the invention of computers, data processing was performed by unit record equipment, which is basically a fancy name for punch card equipment. Now, IBM was a company that made these types of machines. It is all kind of an electromechanical IBM accounting machine that reads a deck of punch cards on its integrated card reader. But then came mainframe computers, followed by personal computers, and a whole new way to coordinate work vehicles. Now, at its core today, the technology enables companies to manage vehicle tracking, which now includes recording mechanical diagnostics and even driver behavior. So think about this. This includes everything from excavators to even trucks on our job sites. So for the construction industry specifically, this means automating construction fleet operations, integrating things like fuel cards and GPS, tracking equipment maintenance and repair, watching idling and driver performance, safety recording, and there's so much more. Construction is kind of this unique animal because there are complex projects and multiple job sites. A piece of equipment might be in use on one project one day and then another the very next. This all needs to be managed, and technology can help to do that. But there are countless systems. So where do you start? I would suggest considering your objectives. So let's look at just one example, the Department of Transportation. Now it has the following fleet management goals that I want to suggest. Number one, reduce the use of petroleum. Increase total alternative fuel consumption. Acquire a fuel-efficient fleet. Optimize the number and types of vehicles, and promote new alternative fuel vehicle technologies. Now these are the DOT objectives. What are yours? It just might help you to move to a more efficient fleet. Fleet management. Those are your words of the day. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching Construct Tech TV, where we are talking tech at the job site.